What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you to the March 2025 edition of Let's Talk, and welcome to the first update of the year, everybody. I am so sorry for not getting one out in February like I normally do, but unfortunately, due to reasons beyond my control that I am going to talk about at the end of today's video, not here in a second, I just wasn't able to do it. And yeah, we'll go over those things a little bit because it is something that I really do need to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it in great detail today, though, just because I don't exactly know all of the logistics of the situation just yet, so I can't really definitively say how much of an impact this is going to have, but it is something that I do want to bring up just because it's something, I guess, to be aware of because it is negatively impacting things, specifically the channel and my workflow, so we will have to see. It's not anything like, it's probably not what you're expecting. It's not like, oh, I've had some big life change that means I can't upload as often. No, it's nothing like that. Again, I'll talk about it at the end, but it's just something that I do want everyone who listens to this to be aware of because it does have an effect. It does have an impact. But first things first, let's get into the actual channel stuff and go over that, especially because the first update of the year is usually when I take the time to sort of expound upon everything that I was talking about in the preview video, which has now been 2 months since that came out. And I mean, what I said in there was pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be making less promises about the future. I'm going to be taking things down a notch as far as setting expectations, which I already kind of did last year, but I guess I need to do that even more, not just for you guys, but also for myself, so that I don't get it in my head that I'm going to do something and then I just, for one reason or another, can't make it happen, or I'm not feeling it, or suddenly I have a change of heart, or something else comes up and gets in the way. All those things and more are reasons why I just don't want to lay out a path forward. I am absolutely happy to continue sharing the games that are on my mind, the games that I am thinking about possibly making a series happen, especially as some of those games aren't even out yet. But we'll cover all that here in a minute. So in that preview video, there were only 2 games that I promised you guys are going to get this year, and that is Pokemon Black and White 2 and Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Now, Pokemon Black and White 2 was supposed to happen this year regardless. I said I was going to start a Let's Play of it 2 years after when I started Pokemon Black and White 1. Makes a lot of sense. It's not going to be exactly to the day. In fact, I think Platinum isn't going to be ending until sometime in May, possibly even June. I don't know 100% on that one because I still haven't recorded the endgame stuff for Platinum, although I'm hoping to do that this month. And, we'll have to see, but that's looking about when Black and White 2 might come out. I don't know. Black and White 2 is also going to be interesting because it's supposed to be along the lines of Black and White 1, like the same level of production, the same level of like effects and graphics and whatnot, but also Black and White 1 also did a lot of the work for me, like what I did in that Let's Play and what I took care of and covered and went into great detail over. I'm not going to be repeating that information too much in the sequel, so it's going to be a little bit less explanation heavy than Black and White 1. Not that Pokemon games not need a lot of explanation all the time, but more as just a general coverage of Generation 5. I'm actually currently playing through Black and White 2 right now to get prepared for it, which I'm sure you'd all be surprised to know I don't actually do that very often. Generally, I just go off of like my old memories of a game, or the time when I played it years and years and years ago, and I don't generally play through the entire thing and then immediately jump into a playthrough of it on the channel. I've, in fact, probably only done that a handful of times in the entire history of this channel, but I am doing that here. And in fact, I'm also doing that for Middle-earth: Shadow of War, kind of. I'm actually playing through Shadow of Mordor again to get acquainted with the game's gameplay and controls and systems and whatnot, just to prepare for the sequel. But I'm not jumping right into Shadow of War because I haven't played Shadow of War, so I don't want to spoil it for myself. So I'm just kind of getting used to it, getting prepared. Shadow of Mordor is also a much shorter game than I remember it being, too. Like, I'm already almost done with it, and I'm like maybe 14 hours in. So I honestly thought that was just like, I guess the bar for open world games back when that came out was a lot lower in terms of the amount of bloat and content in those sorts of games than it is now. Because nowadays, when you think of an open world game, you go, oh man, 40 to 60 hours. But back then, it was like 20 hours. That sounds like a lot. You know what I mean? Like, very, very different time period. I mean, this was As a reminder, this was right at the end of the PS3 and 360 generation, going into PS4 and Xbox One. So I'll have to see how my opinion holds up on that one, but I am enjoying it. I still think it's a very fun game, and, you know, getting ready for Shadow of War, although Shadow of War is probably going to be even a longer ways out, because that is waiting for Animal Crossing New Horizons to finish, which if I were a betting man, and I were to just, okay, let me think about this, where I'm at in the Let's Play and how much of the Let's Play I technically have left. So something like 30 episodes left in the series. No, it's probably a little less than that. It's probably 25 to 30. Let's go in that range. So if that's the range I were to give it, right now it is looking like September is going to be when Animal Crossing New Horizons ends, which... that's a long ways out. That's a really, really long ways out. There is still quite a lot of Animal Crossing left. I mean, I don't know how much I'm going to end up skipping. Maybe I'll end up pushing things ahead in time for it. But my plan is to get through an entire year in-game. And right now I'm like halfway there. I mean, granted, the first half of the year was much slower, much more meandering, and much more progression-based and much more about taking my time than the second half is going to be. But still, that's a long time in the game, and I mean, we've still got several episodes left to get through with Animal Crossing before I'm ready to start on Shadow of War. So I don't know. That's going to be a long time. This is my problem right now, is that all of the current series are going to take a while. I mean, Destiny, I have videos scheduled through 2026, and I haven't even started on the Final Shape stuff yet. In fact, that's probably going to be either April or May for me. We will see. Pokemon Platinum, like I said, it's got a long ways to go. And then Black and White 2, knowing how long a Pokemon Let's Play takes, like just as an example, Platinum, I started back on September 19th, okay? So if even just to now, it's already been it's going to be over 6 months by the time the year is out. And it's certainly going to be longer than that. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, how many episodes I still have left to edit and schedule and whatnot, and how much of the endgame stuff I still have to do. We're probably not going to be done with Platinum until sometime in May or June, and then Black and White 2 starts. So that's going to be going into 2026 at this point. And then Super Mario Galaxy, which is one of the shortest series on the channel, that's not going to be done until May. I've already scheduled the finale for that series. In fact, I can tell you what day the finale goes up, and that's May 23rd. So that's a long ways out. And then we have Fallout 4, which is starting. Now, granted, this is not going to be a full Fallout 4 playthrough, not by any means. This is going to be a very Institute faction-specific focused playthrough, much like I did with the Brotherhood of Steel a few years back. We're focusing in on the Institute. I'm trying to get through each of the different endings in the game, and then we're done with it. So we're going to do like a few quests that are somewhat Institute influenced or adjacent and whatnot. But aside from that, this is probably going to be a 20 episodes max playthrough of Fallout 4. And even if I say 20 episodes max, I mean, they only go up once a week. That's looking like, what, almost 5 months? That's a long time. That's a long time. And then Mario Party 5 is set for after that, and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. This is why I don't like making plans, is because this is such a long period of time that I have to consider, and I've got so many things going on at the moment that I don't want to like sit down and say this is going to happen definitively when 6 months from now I might have a completely different change of heart. I might be somewhere entirely different in my life, and especially given recent circumstances, I have no idea where I want to go with things, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to have any idea where I want to go with certain things. But at the very least, I guess I can set a little bit of expectations, just a tiny bit, just going over the games that I currently have on the docket. Again, this is all subject to change. Some of these could fall out. Some of these could, I don't know, be moved up in one way or another. But these are all of the ones for this year that I'm currently thinking. So actually at the top of my list, I have that Fallout 4 playthrough, Black and White 2, and Shadow of War. They were my top 3, and it's looking like those are going to be the only ones that are guaranteed for this year. But I also have Super Mario Galaxy 2, which, I mean, it was kind of the intention to get to that game, given that I've never actually done a Let's Play of Galaxy 2 before. In fact, that's the entire reason I did a re-Let's Play of Galaxy 1, is to eventually get to that game. I've got BioShock Infinite, which is on the docket. I've talked about this game before, but I Let's Played BioShock 1 and 2 back in the day. It's only a matter of time before I get around to Infinite. Mario Party 5, that is also on the docket. Obviously, I'm trying to get through every single Mario Party and what's the next game in the series, but Party 5. Doom Eternal. Okay, this is an interesting one. This one actually is something that's worth discussing a little bit. So, Doom Eternal is a very tentative maybe playthrough. I want to right off the bat start and say that Doom 2016, I mean, if you guys watch my top 20 video, Doom 2016 is one of my all-time favorite games. I love it to death. I think it is so much fun. I did a playthrough of it back in the day. It's a blast. It's wonderful. It's great. Excellent game. Doom Eternal is a game I'm actually not too fond of at all, but it has a lot of good things about it. It's just that many of the changes that it made from what Doom 2016 was doing, I don't think are changes for the better. I prefer what Doom 2016 was doing. So I'm not huge on Doom Eternal. However, Doom the Dark Ages is coming out here relatively soon, and I'm not about to tell you guys that, oh, I think that game's going to be excellent, because it actually is showing off a lot of things that really worry me. It almost, like, I don't know. I prefer the simplistic approach of Doom. I prefer the brainless boomer shooter approach to Doom. I like it better when it's just trying to be high octane, all action focused, and nothing else. I don't like platforming. I really don't like platforming in these games, and Eternal did a lot of that. I also don't like the over-reliance on modernized systems and whatnot. And again, Eternal did a lot of that, and that is not something that it looks like Doom the Dark Ages is scaling back on in any way. So, Doom Eternal, just to put it mildly, Doom Eternal happening on this channel is entirely predicated on whether or not Doom the Dark Ages is a good game. And I'm not saying good objectively, because obviously I don't have the right or authority to say that. I'm saying if I like Doom the Dark Ages, I think it's a good game. If I think it's a good game, then I will do a playthrough of Eternal as a means of getting to the Dark Ages someday. But I don't know if 100% that's going to happen. It's just that it's on my list just in case. I mean, that game is a couple of months away, so we will have to see. But that is why it's on my list. If Dark Ages is good, I do want to make a trilogy out of it. Let's see, what else do I have on here? I've got Dishonored. Dishonored is on here as well, although I seriously doubt that's going to happen this year. That's probably going to happen sometime next year. I don't know, we'll see. It's not a super long game. It actually very well could happen at some point. It would actually fit nicely into the Saturday upload slot, so I don't know. We'll see. That's a tentative one. Again, no promises. Another one that, speaking of boomer shooters, is Wolfenstein: The New Order. This is actually a game I've really wanted to cover for a long time. I did play it back in the day, but I don't remember a ton about it aside from a couple of its set pieces, and I don't even know if I was like all that great at it either, but I've really wanted to play through it for a very long time, and as well as its standalone DLC, The Old Blood. Not as much Wolfenstein 2 or Youngblood. Those ones I'm not really as interested in, but I would like to do a New Order playthrough one of these days. So that's possibly on the list. And then a few other games, which are ones that have been, I mean, I've been talking about them for a while, are Returnal and Pacific Drive, which, you know, I covered those in the Variety series. I would really much like to go back to those at some point. Pacific Drive particularly, I want to do a PC playthrough as opposed to a console playthrough. And then Sea of Stars and Yakuza 0. Sea of Stars, I'll just kind of gloss over that. I mean, I already said it's one of my favorite RPGs of the last 10 years. Really want to get around to doing it. It's not going to be a super comprehensive playthrough because I'm not about to tell you that I'm some Sea of Stars maniac who knows everything about the game. I'm also not super adept with JRPGs, so if you're like thinking I'm going to put on some amazing gameplay, I won't. I just like it. It's just a fun game, and I just want to show it to people who have, for one reason or another, never actually seen it in action. It's great. It's a super fun game, so that's really the only reason I want to do it. But Yakuza is one I am hesitant on. In fact, some people could probably tell me if Yakuza even sounds like a good idea for a Let's Play, because I know those games are extremely dialogue heavy. Now, that said, I also know that much of that dialogue is not voiced. So if that's the case, then it's not a terrible idea, I think. But if it is heavily voiced, then I probably shouldn't get anywhere near it, because those kinds of games just aren't good for a Let's Play. But I really want to dive into the series. I know, I've never played the Yakuza games all that much at all. And I know that would come as a shock to a lot of people given how beloved they are at the moment, but I've just never had the time. I've always wanted to. I always really wanted to. They just seem absolutely like my brand of fun and full of humor and style and tons of substance and silliness, and everything about them just screams that I would enjoy these games. But I need some more to start. And from what I hear, Yakuza 0 is the place to start. It's not as dated or as clunky as some of the older Yakuzas, and I mean, it is technically a prequel to the first game, and you know, it's generally believed and thought of as one of the best games in the series by a lot of people. So I don't know, that's kind of on my mind as a maybe, possibly, but it's one that I've been looking at a ton for the, you know, at some point in the future. But I also know that the Yakuza games are incredibly long, so I don't know. It's on my radar. It's one that I've been heavily considering just kind of starting up on a whim, but that needs to be a pretty darn strong whim before I commit to it. So we'll see. We'll see. And then there are actually a few other games on this list that I skipped, but that's because they're not out yet. Let's go over those really quickly. So Subnautica 2, Ghost of Yotei, and Pokemon Legends ZA. Okay, first things first. Subnautica 2. I have every intention of covering that game, no matter how good or bad it is when it comes out. If it's a train wreck, I will still cover it to show why it's a train wreck. If it's a good game, I mean, obviously I want to show it off because this is the sequel to one of my favorite video games of all time. I love Subnautica 1, and even though I'm not as huge on Below Zero, I still think that is a very good game. I really want this to be good, but the problem is that Subnautica 2 is not full releasing this year. It's releasing into early access, which means no, it would not be a good idea to do a Let's Play of the game right off the bat. So I'm probably more than likely going to do like an early access coverage video where maybe I take a look at what it already has, maybe for a few videos, just kind of take a look around, but not quite do quite everything in the game, or at least everything that it has to offer. But someday, when it gets its full release, I have every intention of doing a full Let's Play of that one. So that's why that's here on the list. Ghost of Yotei, absolutely going to happen at some point. Ghost of Tsushima was one of the biggest Let's Plays I've ever done on this channel, and I absolutely intend to take a look at the sequel. Unless it's complete dog shit for whatever reason, but I highly doubt it's going to be. It's, at worst, probably just going to be more of the same. I don't know, maybe they'll do one thing in there that's really stupid that totally drags the quality of the game down, but from everything I can tell, it's probably just going to be a different take on what Ghost of Tsushima was already doing, and in that regard, in that sense, I have every intention of covering it. It's probably going to be the post-Shadow of War game. I don't know. Again, not going to make any promises here, but that does come out this year, so it is going to be on my radar. And I don't know, maybe I'll do because I did do that with Ghost of Tsushima where I talked about my thoughts on the game, and I don't know, maybe I'll do that with Ghost of Yotei as well, especially because I would like to play through that entire game for myself before actually doing a Let's Play of it. And then last is Pokemon Legends ZA, which we actually just recently got a gameplay reveal for at the Pokemon Presents. Now, I gotta say, and this is just me, speaking personally, entirely from my perspective, I'm not super impressed with what I saw in that preview. It does not look very good, and this is coming from someone who loved Legends Arceus, and a lot of that was due to the novelty, due to how different it was, but there was something about the map and world design of Legends Arceus that really struck me in a way that most other Pokemon games don't. And looking at what I can tell is Legends ZA is trying to do, that looks like the weakest aspect of this next game, which really has me nervous. Now, if it is good, if I do end up liking it, I have every intention of doing a Let's Play of that one as well. Obviously, that will have to come after Black and White 2, but who knows? We'll see. It's one I've definitely got my eye on as a possibility. It's one that I think is more likely than not, again, barring the fact that it's absolutely freaking terrible, which, I mean, knowing Game Freak these days, it could be. I'm not about to, make any judgment calls. I'm definitely not one of those people who absolutely rages at every single Game Freak release and just goes, where's Unreal Engine 5? I'm not that. I understand that they refuse to budge on these things, and they will never try to be better in certain departments. They might not even be capable of being better. Sometimes, money isn't everything. I know people will say, oh, this company makes so much money, why can't they do better? Well, some companies are just stubborn, man. Some companies, I don't know if you have ever been to certain small businesses or mom and pop shops, even if they're the most popular hangout joint in the entire area. Sometimes they just refuse to change. Sometimes they are just stubborn, and that can be a good thing because sometimes that's the reason you go there in the first place. And other times it's because they think that they can still get away with things that they were doing 40 years ago. And sometimes when the reality hits them, it's like a cold splash of water and or an entire nuke, and then the entire company goes under. You never know how that's going to turn out. But right now, it's working for Game Freak. Therefore, they refuse to change. They refuse to hire different talent. They refuse to take outside input too much. They would prefer to outsource to other companies to do other things, but their specific niche, they won't let anyone else touch it, and they refuse to try to do better. And in that regard, I just take them at face value. I take them at what they're giving me, and I see what I can find out of them that I like. Aside from that, I don't really find a whole ton of merit in complaining about those sorts of things because I just don't see it changing unless something drastic happens. But all of that said, as a sequel to Legends Arceus, if ZA ends up being good, that's something that I definitely want to do. If it's not good, well, maybe I'll skip it, but then I'll talk about my reasons for doing so. I don't know. We'll see. That is the full list of games that are kind of on the docket for me at the moment. That it's not just those. Those are all of the quote-unquote big projects that I have planned, but I have a bunch of like smaller ones that I've also been thinking about as well, but I'm not going to list all of those today. I feel like that's just a little bit too excessive. The long and the short of it is this year is going to be honestly pretty samey. For most, I would say all the way through summer, it's mostly just going to be the same stuff. I mean, Mario Galaxy will be done by then, and then Fallout 4 will be coming to an end somewhere in the middle there, but Pokemon will still be going, Destiny will still be going, Animal Crossing will still be going, and that's pretty much most of what's going on the channel at the moment. So yeah, not a lot's going to be changing this year. We're going to be just kind of coasting, but honestly, I kind of need that this year, especially with what's been going on, and I guess I might as well end this whole update by talking about that a bit. It's twofold, honestly. Honestly, if I want to be very specific, I could say it's threefold, but some of those things kind of go hand in hand. So I've talked about this in previous years. Mental health in general is something I advocate on this channel a lot. I think it's very important. I've made videos about this kind of stuff. I even touched upon it in my top 20 video. And I would not consider myself as somebody that has chronic depression. I definitely don't. I'm not one of those people who suffers from it all the time, but I definitely have seasonal depression. And it sucks too because it's like during my favorite time of year. I love winter. I know, I'm weird, but I'm one of those people who definitely prefers the fact that I can continuously bundle up and add layers until I feel cozy to the kind of weather where you could strip down naked and still be hot. I hate the summer. It makes me miserable. It makes me upset. And I want to be anywhere but outside when it's summer out. I would rather be inside at all times, enjoying the AC and never experiencing the sun. Which is ironic because it's probably the lack of sun in winter that causes my seasonal depression, as it does with most people around this time of year. And, really the only thing I hate about winter is driving in it. Everything else I prefer about the season, but it doesn't matter because the chemicals in my brain tend to disagree, and I always kind of go into a rut. And usually this happens in January more than in December. In January and February, I'm usually kind of working at half my normal speed, half my efficiency. And it's just a thing, and I just deal with it. I always know it's coming, and I don't always adequately prepare for it, but I do know it's coming. However, this year in particular, it was like a double whammy because that top 20 video, I am so glad. I want to say this right off the bat. Thank you to everybody who watched that and supported it and enjoyed it. I had no idea that it was going to get the reception that it got. Sure, some people still came in and were like, your opinion's bad, and then disliked the video. And, that's fine. I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. That's how people are just going to be. Frickin' people click on reviews and dislike them more than they like them because of apparently the review is supposed to conform to their own opinions and whatnot. And I don't know. I've never understood that mentality. People are always going to be that way, but whatever. To everybody else who doesn't think that way or who just enjoyed it for what it was, thank you so much. I poured so much time and so much effort into that, and To be completely honest, I'm not even happy with the way that it came out because there's a lot of things about it I would love to change. There's some angles on certain discussions and certain topics that I wish I would have taken differently. Like, I don't know. It was definitely like I was trying to keep it as current as possible. I was trying to make it like relevant to that moment in time. This is why the Okami entry was actually very much centered on the announcement of Okami 2. But looking back on that in hindsight, I kind of wish I had actually said more about the game itself. And I don't know. There's a lot of things that I'm like, I don't know how I feel about how I took an approach to this and yada, yada, yada. I'm never happy. I'm never happy with the things that I pour so much time into that it legitimately takes, dozens of hours away of my life. I worked on that video. I mean, if I want to talk about the first draft of the script, I've been working on that top 20 video for almost a year. But if, rewrites and constant changes and whatnot, I would say it was really the better part of like the last 3 months of the year where it was a huge focus for me. Even then, I would say October, it was mostly about getting the audio done and getting my voice recorded. November and December was the editing. Lots and lots of editing, and then sometimes changing some things that I didn't necessarily like. I rewrote quite a few entries to the point where, if I'm like I said, I don't really count the first draft of the script because by the end of it, it was the script of Theseus. So much had changed that it wasn't even identifiable from the first draft, and even some entries changed actually. Like, a lot of people will say, I don't even know how you can quantify and organize this top 20. Personally, I don't put too much stock into the organization of everything beyond like the top 5. The rest of it just kind of falls into place as I'm writing. It's more of a feel thing, I just kind of go through it and go, I would consider this my 15th favorite game, but do I like it more than my 16th favorite game? Well, no, so maybe this one should actually go down. And that's kind of what I do, and I just do it on a whim as I'm going. But there were some games that were in there in the original first draft that didn't end up making it by the end. And, that's just that's the process, and that's how it works. And again, it was a lot of work. I'm just glad that everybody liked it. Thank you so much. That thing took so much shit out of me. It's unbelievable. I have never in my life been so burned out by a singular video on this channel. And I think a lot of that was the stress of making sure it looked and more or less came across the way that I wanted it to, and still not being necessarily happy with it, and then just going, well, it's out. There's nothing I can do to change it now. And I don't know. Like, gosh, I would be a horrible... If I ever tried to go into, like, film directing, man, I would be terrible at that. Listen, I get it, George Lucas. I do. I understand why you're, like, always trying to change stuff. Not that I'm saying I agree with your changes, but it's one of those things where it's like once you put something out there, it's really, really hard to reconcile with that sometimes and necessarily be happy with it. So I absolutely understand the perfectionist mentality from that standpoint. I do not dare have that mentality with all of my normal day-to-day videos, because if I did, I would never get anything done. Ever. So those, they just kind of are what they are. I make them, but something like that, man, it took so much out of me. And I think that burnout, coupled with the feeling that I usually get around that time of year, those two things sort of collided and really just sapped a lot out of me. And, it still would have been possible to work through all of that. It still would have been possible to, just find the days where things were better and the days where I felt like I had a little bit more energy in me, and then just focused on those days, and then took all the rest of the time that I had to just sort of relax and take time off and recuperate and stuff like that. That would have been fine. There was only one problem. I wasn't allowed to pick and choose my days, and that's because of the other thing that, well, we'll see how this turns out. So, what sucks? What really, really sucks? It's getting older, man. Getting older is not fun. I have worked let's just call it what it is. It's a labor job for most of my working life. Pretty much from, honestly, since I graduated high school, pretty much from 18 until I would say about 4 years ago, I was doing a pretty physically intensive job. Let's just put it that way. In fact, far and away the most physically intensive job at the place that I work at. And I mean, it was hard, but I managed to do it. And for a long time, especially when you're at that age, you just kind of feel invincible. You don't really notice the possible after effects that you're going to have, and you just kind of do it, especially because as physically taxing as it was so easy otherwise. I really didn't bother me for many reasons, because it was just something I could just pick up and do, and I got paid actually pretty good money to do it. And I mean, pretty good money relatively, I should say. I would not say that. I would not recommend this to anybody who's looking for a quick bit of cash. Not by any means, but it was definitely something that paid decently for what I was expected to do. And, I did that for a while, and I would say about when I turned 28. So that would, or a little bit before that. So that would be what, 2021? Yeah, that'd be 2021. That year was the year where I just decided I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. I was feeling too much in my knees and in my back, to the point where I was just like, no, this isn't a good idea. And I mean, I can take a step back and realize the absurdity of that situation and go, wow, 28? For most people, that's the prime of their life, and that's when my body is breaking down. That's really stupid. I know. This is not my brightest thing, my brightest moment I've ever had. Staying in a thing like this, trust me, it's not worth it. Don't do it. But regardless, it's happened, it's in the past, and I've already spent the last few years reconciling with it. I'm not going to beat myself up here. The point is that it didn't feel very good, and I did end up changing. I made a change. I now do stuff that isn't nearly as physically intensive. It's actually very, very simple. But even when I, in spite of all that, even though I'm not doing those things, it still has an effect, a lingering effect. And this year in particular, I felt those effects palpably. And I do blame the cold for this specifically. I think right when the temperature dropped is when I really started to feel these sorts of things. I always thought it was kind of funny that, people make, oh man, the cold, it affects, but it does. It really, really does. And here's something, this is something I thought I wasn't going to experience until I was in my 50s. And yet here I am in my 30s, and I'm, the cold sets in, and I'm having days where the chronic pain is so bad that I can't move. And this is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if I'm being completely callous about this, I can say, I can still record a video, though. I can still sit in a chair and play a video game, right? Not really. I don't think people realize how, if you don't experience chronic pain, how debilitating that is, because it's not just the ouch. It's not just the, oh, this hurts, this is throbbing, I can't go anywhere, my mobility's sapped, but at least I can sit and do things. No, it's not even that. Not only is it mentally infuriating to deal with it, and emotionally infuriating and taxing, it does require a lot out of you physically, even if you're just laying there, because if you're not actively rehabbing those sorts of things, if you're not doing something to alleviate the pain, it gets worse, a lot worse. And it's one thing to sit and play a game. It's another thing to try and play that game while I'm using a massage roller and icing my calves and working on my knees and doing stretch. You can't do all those sorts of things while trying to enjoy any other activity. The most I can do is stand there or sit there and watch a movie or something like that, which is honestly something I didn't even get done there either, because again, it has such a mental and emotional workload on you dealing with something like that. Especially on days where the pain is way worse than it is, because it's never consistent. Some days it's totally manageable and it's fine. You take a single ibuprofen and you can make it through the day, and other days, no amount of narcotics in the world will alleviate what you're dealing with. I guess enough that it would knock you out, but that's about the extent of it. It sucks. Chronic pain sucks, man. And I gotta say, we're already hitting a time right now as I'm recording this where it's starting to get a little bit warmer. It's starting to get a little bit more, it's getting sunnier out. It's getting better. And I'm already noticing improvements, which is great. That's awesome. It's not, like I said, it's one of those things where I can't 100% gauge how much of an effect this is going to have. But all of that stuff combined these past 3 months, I was absolutely useless on all but maybe a small handful of days during that time period. And it sucked, man. That is also legitimately depressing. When you're already dealing with depression and then you're dealing with something that physically ails you to the point where it's even more it makes things more depressing. It compounds compounds your situation a lot. That's awful. It's not fun. It's horrible. I hate it. And I don't know. I don't know, man. It's one of those things where I'm just like, I don't know what to say about it other than that I had to deal with this. And I'm still technically having to deal with this. But I don't know. Maybe here in a few months I'll feel a lot better. Maybe, you know, like I said, I'm already feeling and seeing some improvements. But who's to say how long that stays? And, you know, if I take time off from it, if I neglect it for a while, who's to say it won't be even worse next time? You know what I mean? Like, this is something I'm still working through, so I can't say anything with total confidence. And again, I can't go into too much crazy detail on all of it because it's like, again, I don't know how serious it is. It's not like I'm not seeing doctors. I'm not just like talking about it. It's like I'm dealing with it, trust me, but it's bad. It's really, really bad. And anyone who has dealt with constant chronic pain can tell you about that, about how much it sucks. I am leaving out the fact that, I mean, I guess I can mention this, but it's not just that I did a labor job for a while. There were injuries in there in the middle too. And so that also adds to the entire problem. And some of that stuff is coming to bite me in the butt too. So it's just a whole bunch of things that really, really suck. And I'm hoping that it doesn't get in the way too much, but right now I have absolutely no way of knowing if and when it's going to strike, if and when it's going to happen, how much it's going to affect me, etc. It's just something that is a thing now. It's something that is going to affect me. It is going to be in my life, and it is very likely going to affect this channel. I mean, it technically already has. I am way behind right now on certain uploads at the moment. In fact, I am recording this the day before a video is supposed to go up, and right after I'm done recording this, I got to actually edit that video so it can go out. Like, that's how far behind I am on certain things. So yeah, it sucks. It really set me back, and we'll have to see how much of an impact this has in the future. But it was something that I wanted to bring up, and might bring up in more detail a little bit later, and have a little bit of a heart-to-heart about it. There is another thing, but maybe I don't think I'll talk about that today. There is something else I wanted to go over that definitely also added to all of that as well, but I think I'll have to save that for another day because, you know, I actually feel like I'm in a great mood today. Like, the day I'm recording this has been one of the best days in a while, and I really don't want to negatively impact that right now by going into some crappy stuff, so we're just going to call it there. That's going to be it for this Let's Talk, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. Thank you for being patient with me. I am so sorry for getting this out so late. I will have Let's Talks from here and through the rest of the year, all the way through until December, I promise. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.